Question number 5, Grant Robertson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Finance. Can workers still expect that the average wage will rise to $62,000 in the next 3 years, as he stated during the period of the election campaign in 2014?
Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, that depends on whether the Treasury forecasts for growth in the average wages from the pre-election update actually occur, because they forecast in the pre-election update that the average wage would grow by $6,600 to $62,000 by mid-2018. The most recent forecasts, which reflect lower inflation, push that point out 3 months later. That is, they'd reach $62,000 by the third quarter of 2018 instead of the second quarter. Treasury's latest forecasts actually show slightly stronger real wage growth over the next few years, which would mean households will have slightly more spending power, but low inflation, which has now been forecast to reach 0 this year, means that the dollar value of wage increases may be slightly less than in that forecast.
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker.
Supplementary question, Grant Robertson.
Well, given that answer, when he said in the election campaign, quote, National's economic plan will make those forecasts a reality, is he now reneging on that statement about possible wage rises for New Zealanders?
Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, no, but we've been very clear that these are economic forecasts, and the member may not be aware of this, but they'll be subject to uncertainty. Inflation may end up being lower than people expected. Migration figures might change. Housing market might alter. But I think what is pretty clear is that it indicates a path of sustainable, moderate increases in income. And that's not a bad outlook for New Zealand families. It's not ideal, but it's not bad.
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker.
Supplementary question, Grant Robertson.
Is it correct to achieve the wage growth that he promised New Zealanders in the election campaign that would require an average wage increase for New Zealanders of 3% per annum, and is he guaranteeing New Zealanders that will happen?
Honourable Bill English.
The member knows no one can guarantee wage increases, and it wasn't a promise. I simply pointed out a fact that the Labor Party weren't happy with, and that is that all economic forecasts actually showed average wages rising when they were trying to argue that New Zealand incomes were going down, and they were simply wrong. Those forecasts remain roughly on tap. New Zealand households can look forward to sustained moderate wage increases if current economic conditions persist, and this government will do its best to reinforce current economic conditions that support higher incomes, because we think it's a good idea.
Supplementary question, Mr.
Supplementary
Speaker.
question, Grant Robertson.
In light of that answer where he said it was not a promise to New Zealanders that the average wage would rise to $62,000, does he recall this graphic being produced by him in the National Party that said National's economic plan will make those forecasts a reality, and why is he once again misleading New Zealanders about wage increases under his government?
Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, I'm not, and actually wages are pretty important to most New Zealanders, and I don't think you'd be able to mislead them. The Labor Party may try to do that, but we don't. In fact, many New Zealanders have a degree of confidence that they can look forward to sustained moderate wage increases, and actually they voted back in a government who they think will take measures that may assist that to occur. So we certainly stand by the fact that all economic forecasts show sustained moderate wage growth in New Zealand.
Supplementary question, Mr. Speaker.
Supplementary question, Grant Robertson.
If when inflation was higher, it was too hot for wage increases, and now that it's low, it's too cold for wage increases, can he tell New Zealanders what the Goldilocks solution looks like when it's just right?
Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, I thought the member would have more original lines than those coming straight out of the PPTA. I haven't actually said either of those things. His job is to be spokesman for the economy, not for the PPTA Secondary School Teachers Union.
Point of order, the Honourable Jerry Brownlee.
Mr Speaker, I'd ask you to have a look later, as you always do, at the nature of the exchange that we've just had. Frankly, I don't think it worked out terribly well for the opposition.
Order. Just make the point.
I assume now that you've allowed political points to be made about campaign matters, that when reports are received by ministers that would point out the fallacies of some of the claims being made by the opposition, they may be used by ministers in answers to their questions.
Speaking to the point of order.
Speaking to the point of order, Grant Robertson.
Mr Speaker, this was a question on notice. Authentication was provided for the question. It was accepted by the clerk's office and it noted the fact that the statement was made during the period of the election campaign. All of my supplementary questions drew on that statement. So, Mr Brownlee, I don't think can rule out those sorts of questions.
And the member, Mr Brownlee, has asked that I have a look at the transcripts later, and I certainly will do so. Question number 6, Barbara Stewart.